Well, good morning and welcome to Northampton, Massachusetts. I just parked the car. Going to check out the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Library and Museum. All right, Forbes Library. Let's head in there. Okay, we've made it inside. The artifacts are upstairs. And there he is, the 30th President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge, former mayor of this town of Northampton. He was actually born on the 4th of July in 1872, as we look at his timeline here. Born in Plymouth, Vermont, graduated from Amherst College, not too far from here. And he started practicing law in 1897, and in 1905 he married Grace Anna Goodhue, who was a teacher in the Clark Institute for the Deaf. Calvin Coolidge bought this desk when he started his law practice, used it right up until the time he became vice president, and actually used it again after he left the Oval Office. This other desk on the right he used when he was a law student, and that door in the background was from his practice, his law practice here. And there's a picture of him giving the State of the Union address. In 1927, President and Mrs. Coolidge vacationed in South Dakota, and while they were there, he spoke at the Mount Rushmore dedication. When the ceremony was over, he left the stage and walked over to a water fountain, which was used by the public, and he drank out of that water fountain, even though it's kind of not what presidents were supposed to do. But he did it, and it endeared him to the hearts of people that he wasn't aloof. He just was among the normal, everyday folks like you and me. And there he is with Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and Harvey Firestone. So, those are not everyday normal people like you and me. But anyways, that was kind of typical of Coolidge. He was known to be a humble man of integrity, and that was very refreshing. After Warren G. Harding's gregarious personality started to kind of wear thin on people, and there were some scandals at the end of his presidency, Coolidge was able to reassure the American people that the presidency was in good hands. Of course, we should definitely say a word about Grace Coolidge. She was born in Burlington, Vermont, graduated from the University of Vermont in Burlington. And she was a very outgoing person, and she committed much of her life to helping the hearing impaired. She was a very popular first lady, very stylish and charming, and very likable. And she was such an avid baseball fan that she was nicknamed the First Lady of Baseball, as we're about to see a picture of her at the World Series here. Now, I mentioned she was outgoing. Calvin Coolidge was a quiet, introverted kind of person, and so quiet that A Washington, D.C. hostess told him at a party one time she'd made a bet that she could get him to say more than 2 words at that party. He had a great answer for her. He said, "You lose. Opposites attract." Now, Calvin Coolidge entered politics at the local level here in Northampton as a councilman, and then he served as the mayor. He eventually became the lieutenant governor here in Massachusetts, and then the governor. While he was the governor, the Boston police went on strike, and they asked for his support, and he didn't give it to them. And in fact, he said, "There is no right to strike against the public safety by anybody, anywhere, anytime." And with that one sentence, that sort of catapulted him into the national limelight. He was asked to be the vice presidential candidate on Warren G. Harding's ticket, and of course they won. Warren G. Harding died in office, and when he did, as I mentioned earlier, Calvin Coolidge was sworn in. He ran for president in the next election in his own right, and he won in a landslide. In 1925, when he had won re-election, Calvin Coolidge gave his inaugural address, and that was the first inaugural address to be broadcast on national radio. There's the top hat he wore at the inauguration. And there's a picture of his dad listening to his son give the inaugural address. This is a camera that was used by the Coolidges. I guess cameras have changed a little bit over the years. A lot of great artifacts and pictures. Here he is giving a speech to some newspaper editors. One of his cabinet members won the Nobel Peace Prize. Actually, two of his cabinet members won the Nobel Peace Prize. Kind of ironically, when you consider his policy was to sort of be hands-off. I think that's the way to describe it. Yeah, he committed to thrift at home and peace abroad. So fiscal responsibility and not getting overly involved in things on the international scene. And there he is being sworn in. And I'm not a history teacher or a historian, so I might get some of this wrong. I mentioned that strike by the Boston police force. There's a picture from that episode. And of course, as I mentioned, he took a little bit of a stand, or actually he took a very firm stand in that situation, which, of course, you can never make everybody happy, and some people may feel like he didn't, he was a little tough on the police, but a lot of people did respect him for that stand, and anyways. In the year when women were finally able to vote in a presidential election was 1920. It happened to be the year Grace Coolidge's husband was on the ticket as a vice presidential candidate, and there she is, casting a vote, let's assume, for Warren G. Harding and Calvin Coolidge. I found it interesting that when Warren G. Harding died, Calvin Coolidge was sworn in as president by his father at 2:47 a.m. at the family home in Plymouth, Vermont. That happened by kerosene lamplight. And this thing shows the slogan they used: keep cool and keep Coolidge. Pretty clever. Look at that photograph of Northampton. And there's Coolidge's house here in Northampton. I showed that in an earlier video. A week after he spoke at the dedication of Mount Rushmore, he made a surprise announcement. He said, "I do not choose to run." He didn't want to run for president again, even though he would have easily won, probably. He just kind of decided he was done. He didn't want to do it anymore. After he made that announcement, he went back here to Northampton and wrote a newspaper column and some magazine articles, and then less than 4 years after leaving the White House, he died of a heart attack, and I think he's buried in Plymouth, Vermont. All right, that's going to do it here from the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Library and Museum. Let me just say, I love this town. I've been here to Northampton a couple of times to explore. Really a beautiful town, and of course it helps this is a beautiful day. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.